Well, welcome everyone to the fourth Foil Guy live stream. As I'm sure you are already aware of at this point, we will be taking open commissions. Just want to make sure that the audio is going through okay. And the echo will confirm that. Awesome. So, you know the deal. Next hour or two, we are going to be setting aside time to take requests. I will, of course, be taking anything as long as the sculpture in of itself is appropriate for all ages. It can be from something that obviously you wouldn't show in a kindergarten, but as long as the figure in of itself is safe for work, then we are all square, I guess as the saying goes. I got a few sculpture requests in the backlog that I'll be starting with. One, of course, requested from the missus. So since it's kind of been the routine for us to start with a Disney themed request, we're actually going to be doing a 3-for-1. Also, excuse me, I just had lunch. The three good fairies from Sleeping Beauty, Flora, Fauna, and Merryweather. I'll be beginning with them. And note that the chat box is going to be available live for any requests that I will be taking as we go along. And also note as well that the time that's spent, obviously, we encourage the kind of engagement and banter regarding those characters of yours, whether they're favorites or just ones that you're familiar with. Please, by all means, redeem the time. Also note that these sculptures are going to be uploaded as individual videos later, sped up, so that you can see them being done and prove that this wasn't being done by AI. Support real artists, folks. We will be beginning, though, with the three fairies. So without further ado, let's get started. That was an amusing thing for me. As I mentioned before I got married, my wife is a diehard fan of Sleeping Beauty, real life Princess Aurora, but she loves Sleeping Beauty to death. And for the life of me, I didn't understand the difference between the plot lines of Snow White and Sleeping Beauty because, again, some of the more major plot points were just so familiar. So now that I've gotten the chance to watch it a bit more closely, things you learn. And of course, appreciating all of their personalities, not just in color coding, but especially regarding the levels of sass that they portray, was always an amusing thing to be able to watch it, not just when I was a little guy, but even more so now as a big boy. Love to hear your guys' favorite Disney films, any quirks or side characters that you have preferences for and why. Always appreciate, as is usually the case for art-based live streams, to appreciate and acknowledge the art where it comes. And it's always the little details, I think, that stand out, not just in terms of their character design, but how they're drawn. Expresses little things about their personalities, too. It's kind of Fauna, the green one, being the more level-headed of the three, and her being kind of the more well-proportioned, and then Flora and Merryweather always going at each other's throats over the color of the dress. But none can match the hilarious comment of saying that this dress is too unattractive, and they said without hesitation that it's because it's on you. That makes me smile. And taking care of that princess for years. Only imagine not just the sniping that took place off camera, but especially towards some of the younger years. Can't deny the classics either, because I believe it was the release of Sleeping Beauty that the original Disneyland was actually advertising for, the Disney Castle and so forth. So call it a momentous occasion for more than one reason. Still, never too amusing as well when you start to look up the source material and find out that the qualification for good fairies was a necessary one. Because, man, if you read some of the old folklore, and that's easier concerns as far as fairies were concerned. Who knows? Just making these things accessible to kids. Can't fault them for it. And as we've seen, enjoy the characters. Of course, going to be starting with Merryweather. And you know what else was something funny? I don't know if any of you here watching, either now or later, are into card games or not, but one of the things that I did early on for my wife was to get her those Disney Lorcana cards. I wasn't too keen at first to start actually playing the game. I just wanted to get her something Sleeping Beauty themed so that she'd have something in her collection. But the game's actually pretty fun. And when I bought her just every single one of the first edition characters that first released, first series, I think is what they would call it, characters that, of course, were themed around Sleeping Beauty, then you know how the hobbies start, then all heck broke loose. And it became a defined part of the household. Still, do enjoy the opportunities, be a blessing to people, both in and outside of the home. Wand here. I think I'll do her cape first before the wings. Based on that drawing, they are protruding from that. But yeah, no, it's a very fun game though, Lorcana. The two main decks that we ended up making, she ended up with a Maleficent themed deck that was more about spamming all of her pet Raven Diablo. And my prime deck was, and still is, Mulan, not just because of the love for the tomboys as reflected in choosing a girl like her, but even more so when we got to see things like Jafar's Heist and so forth. They got some really powerful cards for Mulan's theme, and mixing them with other characters like Brother Bear and so forth, that it worked out very well. All right, so but the only reason that came up was because it helped me learn the names of the characters more, because they, on top of just watching the show every now and again on the VHS Disney Plus, there was also the benefit of getting to associate them with the cards and fearing them when they get played. Although Merryweather's not exactly a powerhouse, Flora definitely comes in handy when playing against her. There's Merryweather. But now it's a pretty even-handed exchange, because the way that my wife and I will always play it together is that we'll, have our little play mats and so forth, and the tokens, the custom trackers of all of our life points, the lore as they call it. But then when we get more into the game, it's never really a matter of, oh, my decks are better than your decks, because when we play, it's okay, we pick the deck that we want, and then we do our match, and then finally, based on whoever wins or loses that game, we just swap the decks and continue to play. So there's a decided advantage on some of the decks over others, but it's not cut and dry, and yet not so one-sided and overpowered is to the point where it doesn't end up being fun anymore, like Pokemon and Yu-Gi-Oh can kind of be. And by all means, I'm not saying that Pokemon and Yu-Gi-Oh aren't fun games to play, but man, you go to some of those competitive tournaments and so forth, and well, you you see things happen that not only make sense only when they are happening to you, but that would never have happened were it only up to the imagination and mathematical skills working with the rules. How many of you guys have been in a situation like that where you had fun with the game, you decided to go to a tournament, and you found out that some of the tryhards were not there to make friends? That's a regular roadblock for me in many hobbies. That's why I only play single player games. Any multiplayer aspects, I was telling one of my coworkers about this. There's three types of people in video game and card game circles. There are the people who do that stuff for a living on a professional basis. There are the victims of said people who don't do anything else. And then there's people like me who just avoid those kinds of interactions entirely. Still, that's not social life, but it also prevents making some needless enemies and negative associations with those fan bases. Because believe me, there are some people that can make it legitimately traumatizing experience. Get good. Yeah, I know. I know. Well, I think if anything else, that's outing yourself. But hey, more power to you if you're talented in a field of hobby. It's your way of enjoying it. It's just not mine. All right, now we're on to fauna. And I remember that is associated with green because grass, plant life. That's what fauna is referring to. Fortunately, again, because of the Arcana game, I started paying more attention to those creatures. Merryweather, I assume, because of rainwater. Just remembering their lines continues to be classic. Despite being based on a lot of mythology, they certainly threw a lot of Christianity in there too. And as the more eager to raise a baby like Briar Rose, aka Aurora, her maternal instinct was always cute. Many friends in my life gotten to see them bring little ones into the world, and nothing's cuter than fulfilling an innocent stereotype. Opportunities for mama to be mama. It is something they have been training in since they were playing with toys. Whereas I was playing with things like bulldozers, tractors, and so forth. Playing of dolls, I think, was setting them up for something that, of course, the next generation benefits from greatly. Last live stream, we had an individual here who shared his craft with us, being a professional hat maker. I'd love to pick his brain and find out what these particular dress hats were called with the little under chin straps and so forth. But maybe they'll join us later. Who knows? Yeah, and by all means, pass the time, continue the banter. You guys have anything professional in your fields of study or work that you want to share with us? Because I am always keen to learn. It's the whole reason I keep saying about why I made it a special emphasis to keep making these on the basis of requests because I only know what I know. I only made the things that I liked, and that would appeal to people just like me. But getting to interact with all of you guys is giving me the chance to learn not just about all the other cool stuff out there, but to use that to perfect foil techniques and learn about things that I wouldn't have otherwise. And that is beautiful to me. Set all the fingers and then her wings, which it's amusing to see that around wings for Merryweather, the slimmer wings for Flora, and then Fauna, skinnier. Their wings are all kind of based on their figures too. Isn't that interesting? Always the little details, even the ones unappreciated. I heard that they even did that with the original Macintosh computers. It wasn't just the fact that it functioned, but that they designed the circuit boards and so forth to be beautiful in ways that people just wouldn't appreciate, and yet somehow they can notice. That's probably what makes the more professional levels of art when effort being made behind the scenes that people can tell, but just quite narrow down. Who knows? My limited photography skills, I guess you could say that all of my sculptures have hidden details that won't be appreciated fully unless you see them in person. But hey, the goal is to be a blessing. Hopefully, that is achieved. See if I can start with sculpting her hat onto her the same way. Yeah, looks like it's going to be like the rest of them. Just add the lid to her hat here, and then we'll have some shin cloth post. And we'll just work from the bottom up. Make it blue. Make it pink. By the way, I am officially not just because my wife's preference, so that certainly helps, but officially noting the canonical color for Sleeping Beauty to be pink, since we technically, and I encourage your guys' input on this as well, but with Cinderella, her dress is usually seen as blue, but it was actually silver. So she wouldn't necessarily be a white themed princess. She's always usually associated with light blue. We don't have another pink Aurora. You gotta have the girl color for pink. So the theme there, I think, and I've asked many people about this in totally random and unrelated settings just to add to the awkward tension. But I still would say that canonically, Aurora, her official dress should be the pink one. Blue would be noted for Cinderella, even though it is technically silver. If we have any counter reports, I welcome the debate. Not to start a flame war or anything. I don't know how touchy this issue is amongst the more passionate Disney crowd, but since I guess we are 4-for-0 and starting off these live streams with something Disney themed, you'd think that it probably attracts some of you. Oh, and what was the what do they have in the offing for the new stuff? They have a live action Tangled remake that's going to be out. I especially enjoyed the live action Cinderella because they set the references for the books. The others, not so much. The what was it? Tangled one. I don't know if it's cynicism or just reverse psychology in this regard. I'll explain that in a second. But I'm going to kind of keep my opinions open about that one because you never know with these things. They could make a winner, they could not. But the the thing that I always do, and I had to explain this to my wife, but whenever we would go out to movies, I would always, assume the most negative opinion and just, expect it to be awful. And at first, she thought that just meant, I didn't like going to movies, but I explained it to her. I said, no, no, you see, if I go into a movie thinking it's going to be horrible, very rarely are movies as horrible as, they're often made out to be. The professional critics and stuff, the theater students, they don't generally have the same kind of attention that we have, again, for the average viewer, or vice versa. They, again, note the camera angles and stuff, while we just appreciate whether or not we enjoyed the show. And so I go in kind of as the pretentious film student, not complaining or anything, making people regret taking me out to events, but I just say like, oh, I'm not expecting anything good out of this. And then when I see the movie, then it's always a lot better in the worst case scenario that I believe it to be. And so I said, you see, what I'm doing is I'm tricking myself, because if I believe every time I go to a movie, I'm going to have a terrible time, and I never have a terrible time when I get to spend it with friends and family and getting to see just people putting this stuff together, then I always enjoy the movie experience. Again, it obviously won't work for everybody, but that's my style, if you would prefer it. I just use reverse psychology on myself so that I always end up enjoying something as opposed to risking enjoying something or not. Because even if, say, worst case scenario, I'm right, then I enjoyed the movie for the fact it vindicated me. So, and by the way, that's rarely happened. So, something's just genuinely horrible to me, I'll just outright say no. But if it's just something that's in the offing, the possibility of being a positive or negative experience, I try to maintain a deceptively cynical attitude, if that makes sense. And it's worked out so far. I always enjoy going to the movies, even though I never enjoy going to the movies. You're all following that. All right. So there are the three good fairies. Let's give them, make sure that I'm holding them up right. Merryweather, Fauna, and Flora. Organized by height as well. All right. So that will be our obligatory start to the Disney theme in the live stream. And given the fact that we also end up tapping into Homestuck trolls, anime characters, video games, and so forth, we may as well include that in the mix. So let's just get right to it. I've got one Homestuck character, and they actually are Homestuck here. Cankry Vantis, I believe is how you would pronounce this character's name. Always done in troll form, because the fans aren't sending me any fan art that would be humanoid beyond that, so I'll just stick to what the people want. But let's get to that. Cankry Vantis. For those of you who are just joining us or aren't aware, the Homestuck fan base sends characters that are either from Vast Error or Homestuck proper. Vast Error is a fan fiction of Homestuck, and you need to specify quite passionately, mind you, the difference between the two, that Vast Error and Homestuck are not the same thing. So this is, in fact, a Homestuck character. I was looking for a word that would begin with a vowel to make up for me using "and" properly, but I had to correct myself anyway. So, starting with Disney, continuing with Homestuck Trolls. I think by the next stream, we may be lacking possibly one of those. Maybe more. Maybe you guys will keep us busy as these things start to catch on. There's little dreary eyes, and now for the schematic piece, his hair and horns. Start with the horns, and then we'll work his hair around it. Imagine anatomically that would be correct. All right, now for the hair. Not exactly what you compare to Dragon Ball, but they do have a tendency to monopolize on spikiness. That's more prominent than their facial features. This one actually looks like a strain of fire. I remember when I first figured out how to do that effectively with foil, just kind of looking at the basic shape of Hershey's Kisses and then coming up to a point like that and then trying to craft it for myself. Ooh, excuse me. Again, since I do speaking as part of my profession, you'd think that I would have learned my lesson and not eat before I would have to talk for 2 hours straight, but here we are. Some lessons just are never learned. All right. I think that will be acceptable, hopefully. Cancri Veritas. In troll form, of course. All right. Now, continuing on, and note again that the chat box is open for any requests that you would like as we are going about. I will continue with my backlog until such a time as your desires may be fulfilled. There was also a Pokemon that was requested pretty consistently through all of this, and I've had one in my backlog for a long time that I've been wanting to get to. It was the surprise second evolution tier of Poniard and Bisharp, King Gambit. I would love to see him done, so let's do so. He was introduced in Scarlet and Violet. That generation really opened a lot of amusing doors regarding the competitive scene. I'm not just talking about the Paradox Pokemon either. You go to those Cerebi sites and you get the professional loadouts, and then you see them in action. Pokemon Showdown, I think, was the name of the game. That man, that's a digital professional tournament right there. You get paired up with some real intense people. And that's not always a positive experience, as I aforementioned, and as I'm sure many of you would say amen to. Still, I always like it when, even in spite of continuity errors with some of the films, that they keep building on lines of certain characters, giving them that extra push and pump. Remember, our first live stream, we finished with a Dunsparce, a Dunsparce as well. Given that adorable little creature the recognition that he deserved, despite just being a rare collector Pokemon at the end of Fire Red and Leaf Green, as far as I was concerned. Not the one that you generally was competitive with, but then again, my favorite Pokemon's Absol. That's not exactly competitive either. Did win me over, though, when the first Mega Evolution to be introduced to the storyline in Pokemon Legends EA was Mega Absol, because that meant that I get my favorite Pokemon early. It's not about the most competitive as it is your favorites. And even for the competitively minded, those end up being their favorites too. So collectors, everybody wins, or at least everyone has a good time. By the way, I haven't gotten any requests in this category yet, but I'll just put it out there in case any of you are interested. I've been seeing a lot, not just in terms of the controversy, but also people just making fun memes and stuff regarding Pal World. So if any of you have an interest in that department, by all means, send them in. I would love to make any sculptures that are near and dear to the hearts of individuals as much as groups. I think the big one that stuck out to me, at least what brought it up in my brain as I was talking here, was the one where I don't know if it was like the equivalent of a legendary or what, but it had this tidal wave coming in, and this guy was just basically swearing his head off and screaming, trying to dodge the wave that was coming as a Attack on Titan music was playing, and that, as the kids say today, sent me. So just a thought and suggestion. I don't come up with these requests, you guys do. So if you have a request for a character from Pal World, by all means, not just leave it, but maybe do it during a live stream so I can ask you some questions about it. I'd love to know more about the concept so that when I talk with people about it, I can be informed. Always ideal to know what you're talking about before talking. Unless, of course, what you're talking about is a desire to learn, then I think people give you a little bit of a break as far as whether or not you get all the facts right. And even then, I don't know if any of you guys watching this have preferences as far as the sort of strategies you have going into conversation, but just the ways that you remind yourself not to make a fool of yourself. One of mine is, again, even if I know something, I always prefer to keep it in the context of questions. That way, if it's a serious conversation and they're lying to me, I know it. And if it's a sincere conversation, I can tell because, again, they'll either say, I don't know, and I can explain it to them. And, of course, establish some credibility and sincerity, or to be able to engage in some positive conversations as a result of the exchange. I mean, if you're going to invest the mental energy into engaging with people on certain issues, even the difficult stuff, yes, well, set yourself up to avoid irritating rude people and to enable positive relationships if possible. They're going to lie to you. Doesn't sound like you want to have a second talk with, but if they are the kind of person who is wrong, or they do know something about something that you also know something about, and you can have a positive experience from it, that just is good manners. It's effective. And don't worry, I haven't copyrighted it. You are all to use that tactic in keeping it to questions. But the key is, again, not to be condescending, but just to be tactical. Know how to spot conversations worth having and not, because, well, so you'd imagine on the internet, a lot of sincere people. And in person, you run into a lot of people that think they're still on the internet. The only conversation you can have with them after a certain point is really how you talk to people. Not a good time. Still, appreciate you guys on the internet. At least you guys are positive. Ooh, for the most part. Still, I don't mind criticism, just swearing at me or those kinds of things don't exactly stick either. I mentioned it before. I've had to delete a few Foil Guy channels on other social media platforms, and this one as well, because it just wasn't taking a request. It was just funneling abuse when you're only attracting the kind of people that have nothing but hostility towards what you're doing, instead of attracting the kind of people that would be enjoying what you're doing, you can imagine for an artist that gets depressing. And set as a reminder, if you're following any artists, of course you appreciate them, let them know, because might be part of the reason they're doing it. They're looking for people that are genuinely enjoying what they're producing. It's easy again just to doom scroll, see something that you genuinely admire and pass it by. But most social media platforms make it very easy to let them know in the smallest of ways, especially on platforms like Instagram and Reddit. Left that one recently. The upvotes go a long way for mental health. Let me see if I can pose him in such a way where you can see all the details, those little fins on his arms and the blades on his rib cage spine there. That's not the official name, by the way. I just said spinities, intending to live with it. There we go. Kara Gambit. That's not what this is called. King Gambit. That's it. You have a request for a Kara Gambit? I can't. It was very romantic. I got my wife one for self-defense on her first Valentine's Day after we got married. Anywho, all right. Well, see, we got some set engagement, no request though, so I'll just continue with the backlog. Don't forget, chat box is open for leading requests. Got a request from Tumblr a while back. Again, set backlog for an alien creature called Sputnik. Got a reference photo here, so let's get that out of the way. It looks like a combination between a xenomorph and a cobra. Oh well. If you aren't familiar with it and don't want to look it up, I'm sure you're gonna see what I mean in just a minute. Very reptilian, maybe amphibian. Keep changing the definitions and terms all the time in order to keep up with fraud in those professional fields, but go figure. You can expect more consistency from some, not all, some science fiction platforms than you do from actual scientists these days. And I know exactly why. Have you ever heard the term publish or perish? Basically saying that in order to keep your seats at universities or to be considered a scholar in a particular area, you have to keep pushing out material. And so usually as a result of politics or pressure from cultural groups, they'll publish material that ends up in an echo chamber where, again, they're not necessarily interested in truth, just people that quietly agree with them. They ostracize those who would criticize the work for, again, not the scientific, but the political gains of it. Just ends up a big mess. And again, I'm not saying this is all science. I'm saying that for a lot of fields, the mentality of publisher perish ends up creating a system where you have more to gain by making stuff up and kissing up to whoever's in charge than you do actually contributing to the field. Because if you haven't noticed in history, it's not exactly every day that they come across world-changing scientific innovation. So they either have to rehash things that are already known, continue to work hard on things that they don't have the time to produce in order to continue their funding for it, or just make stuff up. Now, it was really sad for me when, say, for example, seeing all those National Geographic artists, and again, artist here, but artists being put forward as scientists and saying that they found these fossils of transitionary forms when in reality they hadn't. They were just sent shards of bone, told like an AI software essentially, this is what I want you to draw them to be part of, and then the drawings were treated as scientific contributions or discoveries when the artists, not the scientists, were the ones that were just fulfilling a commission for the National Geographic, not for the actual archaeological and paleontological. I don't know how you'd say it. Them sciencey folks, those communities. Go ahead and look it up. Very sad. But hey, not my field, not my problem. Just always make sure that you look things up. Even the stuff I'm talking about here. Can provide links later on if you want those set sources. National Geographic 2001 or 2003, I believe. Save those sources just to stew on my bitterness. Or to answer people who ask me questions about what I'm talking about. They talk about these things. You take your pick as to which of the two is true. I see the kind of xenomorphic things from Alien. Does work with my style of detail, though. Kind of smoother, slender details makes it so that when I do monsters, I can bring some of the more unnerving details out, even like the joints on his toesies here. Not the scientific name for it, by the way. Well, I think it should be. Get that on some sort of Jeopardy equivalent show. What is the scientific term for the external appendages on multi-limbed creatures? I will pick B for toesies. You are correct. And again, I guess brain rot and urban dictionary terms are pretty common speech. The flappy flaps and the boop zone and so forth. We always enjoy when things are made simpler and cuter in those regards. So who knows? Maybe that'll just be like a category on the Wheel of Fortune shows or something. These four mandible claw toothy things. Another thing that's always cute is when you and your friends are just making up words and you're able to articulate those points perfectly and stupidly. Stupid, by the way, stupid, moron, idiot, those kinds of things. They're words with actual meanings, generally one who lives in their own world. I think that one of those actually was referring to a category of scoring on a very superficial, by the way, scoring for intelligence quota or intelligence potential IQ tests. So calling someone that form of a dum-dum isn't always an insult. It's just noting that you would score in a category of something that doesn't actually tell you how intelligent you are, just how much they think based off of problem solving, what your potential of learning could be. It helps when people are constantly calling you low IQ and all that stuff, and you have enough IQ to be able to look those things up and realize the people calling you low IQ don't know what IQ is actually meant to determine or where it comes from. And then you kind of note that the insult is pretty low IQ because it's at least not in the slang application of the term, because that's not what IQ means. All learning stuff, all verifying stuff. Okay, now for the curious mouth aspect of it where I said it kind of looks like a cobra. I'll attach the teeth and stuff at the end. Almost kind of like a heart shape too. I guess that's true for cobras. Yet they're not affectionate. What up with that? Above the camera here, actually, as I'm doing this, I have a pet snake that is presently sunbathing. Her name is Yuki. She is an albino corn snake and very cute. With many of our school's junior hires to be intimidated by the concepts of snakes, but they all say that they like them. I think that's a very positive thing. Named her Yuki, by the way, because again, albino, snow. I was planning on naming her Tigress when I first went out to get a new snake, because my first snake was a ball python named Euphrates. So, Euphrates, Tigress, the rivers. But they didn't have any of the orange ones for the corn snakes. They had the whiter albino one, the more pinkish details. So I'm like, oh, ghost? No, it's a girl. What would be more for white? And I remembered taking Japanese. I was going over vocab terms, different seasons, weather, and Yuki was the word for snow. So I went, oh, that actually is really cute. So it stuck, and she has been a pleasant school mascot ever since. Oh my. Probably give someone nightmares. Might have been the point of the film. The horror has that agenda. Okay. By the way, have any of you seen So I Married an Axe Murderer with Mike Myers? Yeah, played his own grandfather as well as the main character. Emphasized his thick Scottish accent. Like, look at that kid's huge melon. It's like Sputnik. Here we go. We got Sputnik. Make sure you see how that looks on camera. Got the teeth, toesies. Very nice. Hope you guys think so. I think it looks nice. All right. Well, we are 4, technically 6 in. Count the first 3 as one sculpture. Get pretty thin on the foil roll here, but I think we're doing okay. Any requests set for the live chat? I'll keep my eye on it, but do not worry. I also have my backlog. I'm happy to take care of previous requests that have been made. I'm still waiting for clarification on this one, but I guess now is the time as any for that to be cut off. There was a request from Kilua Zodic. I haven't seen the anime, so forgive my pronunciation. Kilua Zodic. But for Hunter x Hunter, I was asking if they wanted the adult version or the kid version. I will generally assume the one that's advertised the most. So let's do that. Kilua Zoldyck. Of art forms having winners and losers recently. I always say with the sheer volume that the winners are going to stand out more than the losers, but the anime genre has certainly been on a high note as of recently. Obviously, the fan bases can be all sorts of silly, but never see someone going halfway on the intended level of achievement they have. When it comes to a lot of the anime that they're producing, you got to respect that. Don't go halfway as far as significance of story, significance of humor, even in the more immature stuff. They do not go halfway into the genre and do a good job in it. I haven't seen Hunter x Hunter, though. Is it any good? Do you have any fans joining us? And by all means, follow ups in the comments too. It helps the engagement. Get basic humanoid features with, as stated before, a very Dragon Ball esque hairstyle. Not that spiky by any means. Keep bringing it up, by the way. I have a backlog that I'm not intending to get to today, unless requested otherwise. Need to look it up in my archives here, but a Dragon Ball character is in the works for something I'll be getting soon. So, any of you know the request or have a request in that department, that would be welcome. It's just thinking there was an old friend of mine. We were watching together the Team 4-Star Dragon Ball Z Abridged series. And he recommended that because obviously they take care of the exposition that the show declined to provide, especially in some of the earlier seasons and formats. But haven't had the chance to get past the movie where the giant robot guy is looking for a new body, all that stuff. Obviously, Team 4-Stars, for the most part, hilarious. But the Perfect Cell saga, I don't think they've gotten to the Majin Buu arc. Still, would be amusing to see where they go with that. Because even noting some of the less well known, but nonetheless just as funny channels that do dub overs and challenges and stuff, like the guy who did the Goblin Slayer one of my favorite rom-coms, Tomo-chan as a Girl, nailed male psychology as far as childhood relationships are concerned. You know, with like the tomboys. But the summary, 3-part summary they did, I mean, for all intents and purposes, they basically did their own abridged version. But oh my heavens, the jokes that they put into that one were so perfect, especially if you watch the show. Which, by the way, you are into the rom-com genre, highly, highly recommended. Both for the abridged explanation and the show itself. Very, very well done. Very cute. They didn't go that far as the immature stuff, too. Most of the more morbid aspects, obviously, were undercut and parenthetical. You have to do a little bit of math as far as one of the character Carol's mom's age when she had her, but that's as bad as it got. Japan, what can I say? Still, Tomo-chan is a girl, and sub or sub, I would both recommend. I personally prefer the sub because I just learned Japanese. Didn't want to take the subtitles words for it when I kept seeing them using swearing and stuff where it didn't seem like that's what was being said. And by the way, most of the time it's not. But I'm able to kind of just listen to it parenthetically while I'm doing other stuff now because I grasp the basic structure of the language and then I can use social cues to fill in the gaps and basically use that in order to learn vocab words. And so far, it's become a little casual hobby in of itself in addition to just watching anime. But anyway, usually it's a oh, I love the dub or I hate the dub. You get some people that do a really good job with it, like Italia, Black Lagoon, Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood, where the dubbed version is almost objectively better. But then there's others where it's just like a disaster. People who did it, no offense to the field of voice acting, I've got several friends in it, but they just kind of phoned it in, or the director didn't really have a defined direction, or was kind of taking care of this anime as a quota rather than a passion project, and it showed. But that's neither here nor there. I'm just rambling. Tomo-chan is a girl, though. I really enjoyed the dub, but I prefer the sub because I can enjoy it, and that's what I was exposed to first, which, in all honesty, is probably how most people form their preferences. What was your impression of the characters? Putting this out there because I'd love to make characters from it again, but you guys are in charge. Soul Eater is kind of a and miss because I was exposed to the dub first. My best friend, who kind of got me into anime, preferred the sub, and I appreciated the sub, especially in the fourth season, fourth arc, and in the conclusory episodes as the series was still being produced and translated and all that stuff. I was watching the sub first, and when I saw them do the dub, it was disappointing, very rushed. So maybe that is the factor. Here we go. Lua from Hunter x Hunter. Based on the lightning present in the photograph reference I have for him, assume that quite the powerhouse. Pun intended. All right. Looking at the live chat here. Any requests you made? No? All right. We'll go back into our backlog here. I got two more anime characters here, but I want to take a break from that for a second. Don't know, because again, I haven't played the game. Don't know if the series is based off of him. I'll find that out when I'm tagging these videos and pictures later. But Gilded Guy was one of the older requests. I can do that now. Let's do it. Gilded Guy. Appreciate the simplicity, said the foil guy. And you guys know my style. I just start with the stick figure, and then we'll add on the armor pieces. It seems like the best details are going to come out for this character with that format. I don't have to decide whether to start at the top or bottom in order to get certain details emphasized. It's going to look the same either way. I'm just curious, though. Can't tell you when I specifically know whether to start from the top or bottom in order to emphasize certain details. It's kind of on instinct at this point because I've been familiar or become familiar with what I know works and doesn't. So to see a character, I can pretty much deduce with a simple glance what's going to be the best approach for this, because I've done plenty of things that haven't worked and very, very profanely reminded of that. But you can use it to learn lessons, or you can use it to lose opportunities. I've chosen both on some occasion. So Gilded Guy. I wonder if this is part of that Silk Song game. Looks kind of like the art style. That's all I'm saying. Do you have any fans here of Gilded Guy that would passionately inform of the difference? apologize in advance for the comparison. It just seems like it would work in the context of a jumper. Platformer, I believe, would be the more appropriate comparison. Also, I never be amused when I see like very simple formats like platformer shooters and stuff, but then it's Souls-like Cuphead and so forth. I'm just seeing how, oh, it's going to be that kind of experience. I don't know. Maybe Gilded Guy is just one of those simpler games. I do have a bittersweet relationship with the Soulsborne community, though. A lot of the villains and bosses and characters and so forth, the NPCs. I love sculpting them, but that was the main reason that I shut off my Reddit account, because the mods mainly, but also the fans of the franchise were so needlessly abusive. Not because the sculptures were bad, you can see them for yourselves, but because that's just kind of how they relate to people. Maybe that's what doing Soulsborne games on purpose does to the psyche. You're just so full of being abused and disappointed that that's just the way you look at life at that point. I say that fully aware as a Soulsborne player myself. Although I'd probably be considered casual. You have beaten Dark Souls 3, and Elden Ring, Shadow of the Erd Tree. I'd say you at least have some proper. And by the way, offline, I didn't want to have to deal with it, as you're all aware. Not a fan of the multiplayer. And as you're also aware, not a fan of the fan base. But they started it. Not a good excuse, by the way. Not a good excuse. Any Gilded Guy fans in the comments here? Love to know more about the playstyle and character. Always something to be able to bless a fan, but even more so to be given an opportunity for them to kind of contribute as well. I've taken the time to learn how to sculpt their favorite character, and they've taken the time to learn about their favorite character. Both be a blessing to each other. Like I said, I want to be able to talk intelligently about things. You do that by a willingness to learn. Maybe that's the twist. Is Gilded Guy actually a girl? Did they pull a Thomas Aaron on her? You never know. Until I have the chance to be informed. And by the way, if you're going to troll and tell me things that aren't true, I will be looking this stuff up later anyway, even if I have no reason to doubt you. So be warned. I trust but verify. There's an old Cold War Russian proverb. It's doubly hilarious to me. Gilded Guy. It reminds me of the structure of Mega Man, too. Not a robot or anything, just kind of the arm pauldrons. That thing stuck out to me. You're going off the art style. There's only so much that you can do with the human frame. So no offenses intended by the comparison. Just noticing. If I were to sculpt Mega Man and I were to sculpt Gilded Guy, I would be able to say, oh, similar approach. Drawing, I know, is a whole other ballpark. So respect the digital artist out there. And physical artist doesn't come out as good on the digital platform, though. By the way, in terms of had a wedding for my cousin a while back, and it was in Las Vegas, or not Las Vegas. It was in San Diego, actually downtown LA. We're all over the place here, but they were setting up for a Comic-Con convention. Usually, you know, all the booths and stuff, exorbitant rates. I've only been to 2 conventions in my life, but the thing that I'm curious about as far as the vendors is concerned is obviously most artists are going to do the things that they enjoy and welcome the opportunity for other people where they will be found to enjoy it with them. But I also am curious about, since I don't do this for a living, I obviously have no investment or hesitation to approach as many topics as possible instead of appealing to just whatever's viral at the time. But I'm curious, as far as people who go to conventions, sell their work, please let me know if you care to communicate about it. But how much do you think plays a role in the sort of art that you want to produce? If you want to, kind of break even from the whole ordeal, do you stock up more on the things that you know are going to sell, or do you just say, kind of like what I do, you're a fan first and a businessman second, Add a little bit more thickness to his thumb so that people know that's exactly what it is. I don't like it when people get immature about the subject. Go. Gilded guy. Looks cute. All right, so that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We're an hour in, and we've got time for 3, maybe 4 more. So any set requests this time around? I'd love to know what you guys want to see. These will all be uploaded as videos individually to prove they are made by hand. The photos will be uploaded to, at the time of this recording, YouTube, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and Tumblr, and DeviantArt. They haven't run me off that yet. Just don't click on any of the ads, which I think is good internet safety. Any requests? Okay, well, since I mentioned it earlier, it's going into the Soulsborne genre. Why don't we do Bloodborne character I've had in the background for a while? This is Mikolash, host of the Nightmare. He's a curious fellow. Not exactly, incomprehensible eldritch abomination, but kind of fits the theme of the game. Any Bloodborne players here? Yes. PlayStation supremacy, all that fun stuff. What are you guys' thoughts, speaking of the PlayStation fans, about the no physical media stuff? I've seen that people were not happy. And as a guy who lives and dies on the principle of owning DVDs before signing up for subscription services, I can appreciate it to a point, but I'd love to hear both sides. If there are those who are proponents and would actually want to articulate it. Don't mind if you disagree with me. I want to make sure you have a reason. And even better, if we don't even disagree yet. Because I have no opinion. I left consoles a long time ago. Why did I leave consoles? It's personal. Just for the sake of the sensitive nature, better time management. Not kind of got married or anything. It was around the time of high school. I just switched over to PC. Not high school, early college. But haven't looked back. Although I was a PlayStation guy heavy through the majority of my childhood and adolescence, and, you know, you just kinda develop muscle memory on the way that you handle some of the controllers. So I preferred it over Xbox, and, I had interesting conversations with my friends about, PlayStation has more buttons, but it's more organized, but, it's sort of contoured around your hands, and well, no, it's more built for older kids. PlayStation's better for younger, and all that stuff, just going back and forth. Not to say any of this is accurate. This is just the points that I was arguing in grade school. But again, when I eventually left the PlayStation console concept entirely, except for handheld, um, I wanted to be able to play some of the older console games I had on PC, and you know just the keyboard wasn't doing it for me, so I ended up doing the whole Xbox USB controller aspect and relearned how to play all those games, and now I prefer Xbox controllers. So time changes a man. You told me when I was a youngin' that I'd be going out of my way to get Xbox controllers because of the preference. I wouldn't have believed you. But here we are. Here we stand. Until, of course, that is not where we are. Might be a interesting philosophical conversation for all of you. In a video taking flow requests on video game and cartoon characters, but just a curiosity on my part to pass the time. So what you guys think about that whole concept of character development in life? Are they things that happen gradual, or is it something that kind of moves forward due to dramatic life circumstances or necessity? I think personally it's a little bit of both. The more dramatic ways, I can say, just using those console preferences as an example, it was adjustment from necessity, but or adjustment from necessity after dramatic life changes, just removing console games from my life altogether, but still wanting to play games in some capacity. But there are other instances where I could know, just gradually those kinds of games got either boring or didn't appeal to me as much as they used to. Nostalgia only takes you so far, that sort of thing. And that's more in terms of things like diet. I used to be a real picky eater, and now that I'm paying for my own meals, I don't do purchase things beyond necessity, and I'm just happy with the sensation of being full. And if I can do that by eating healthy, I could care less what it tastes like. But obviously, that's associated with the dramatic life changes. That's proving both points in gradual adjustment of taste and other things too. So, what do you guys think? You note examples in your life where it was more gradual, or it was more immediate? I can see both. Either or is very rarely an effective way of arguing personal preferences. Granted, there's things like objective truth, and we're not here to dismiss that. I'm just noting the tendency of video game preferences and hobbies. Those are more emotive things, and that can be a broader subject where different psyches appeal to different things. Maybe that's the answer. It depends on the personality type, which also can change. Get a suit jacket in here. It started with the head first as the more basic format because if you know about the character, he's got a huge detailed cage around his head. So I'm gonna get that out of the way. Set for his cape and jacket back. Not to save time per se, but noting they'll be seen as one and the same. And I left the PlayStation 2 thing behind a long time ago, so never got the chance to play Bloodborne. I just watched a lot of playthroughs. For those of you who were experiencing it for the first time, was his encounter difficult for you, as most From Software experiences tend to be, or was it more straightforward than the other ones like Vacuous Spider and Pregnant Lady? Although I've heard the Wet Nurse is probably the scariest, and then the Orphan of Kos, that was the meme maker later on in the game. It was in the DLC, wasn't it? Old Hunters. I know Maria of the Lost Clock Tower was for design, lore significance, and waifu status. But the Orphan of Kos, the hardest fight in that game, given your experience, that may or may not have been part of the Old Hunters thing. I'm not sure. I know that the original game ended with either Airman or the Presence, or just depending on how many of the spinal cords you gathered. All right, so let's get this cage going. Let's start with the long ways. I'll keep the top up to spare myself the drama. Be careful. There we go. Like making a grill, except vertical. Give myself enough space so that I can work around it later. Sidebars and just give him this hourglass shape appearance. Now, I'm sorry about asking about. I know that it's not that simple. Whole YouTube channel is going through just like brief descriptions on little pieces of equipment or putting together cryptic symbolism in the background. Not exactly spelt out for you, let's just say that. All right, he's going to have a 6-sided locking here. So let's get that frame going. And question here is, am I concerned about AI art? Well, as far as my own profession, I'm not really concerned about it at all because, I'm not A, trying to profit off this, B, if it can't generate images of aluminum foil being sculpted, it doesn't really change the fact that I can still hand or mail these to people. And most of all, I'm not concerned about other people getting good with making foil sculptures, so it becoming more of a medium doesn't really threaten my livelihood in any way. Say for two-dimensional artists, that's a cause for concern. But the main issues, obviously, is the dishonesty of using people's work against their will to train and copy from them any other situation that would be, again, considered underhanded. The other issue of reducing the demand by increasing the supply radically to make it so that a very important aspect of the arts is ultimately rendered moot. I would say that the interest of human expression has value. It is not a good thing. But as far as myself personally, I'm not concerned about it in terms of how it affects the foil guy, but I'm thinking about more than just myself in this regard. Say the limit would be in generating thumbnails or sparing time in that regard, using your own likeness, how to choose. Well, I've also seen people abuse that and try to set up false advertisement, but real artists can do that too, making thumbnails that are deceptive. All I would say about that. The host of the nightmare. All right, so let's see here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 requests and 9 sculptures. Got any more requests here? No? Very gracious observers. I appreciate all of you. How about we finish with one more anime character, and then I will cut it off here, since even though the first request was 3 sculptures, I can say tapping it off at 10 is a good one for me. I gotta get back to work at 3 o'clock my time here, so why don't we finish with one more, and we will call it. Any requests that you guys leave, by the way, won't be dismissed. Just those for next time. Please feel free to engage. It'll help the reach. I was actually sent this recently, and I love it, so I'll do it. Um, Princess Kushana from Nausicaa: The Valley of the Wind, one of those Studio Ghibli movies. She was the inspiration for Melania, Blade of Nicola, in Elden Ring, which is the mechanical arm and so forth. So I would love to do that. Let me see if I can get the reference for her here, and then we will get started. The Princess Kush Anna. There we go. And I assume, of course, this will be in her armor, so we'll find a happy medium. Princess Kushana. Any of you guys seen Nausicaa: The Valley of the Wind? Very pleasant movie. A lot of great symbolism and overtones, which again, I think is Studio Ghibli's ideal. Once shared with me, just exchanging an ideas, opinion for what it's worth, but the stories tend to be pretty simple in of themselves, but the real place where the writer shines is not in the stories, but just kind of in the artwork. He's an artist first, story writer second. Obviously, there's meaningful things to work with, but story kind of in of itself is centered around the artwork. Excuse me. So kind of setting the message there. Messiah figure, all that fun stuff. The destroyers, the Ohm, returning back to the basics in reference to the Hindu philosophy and all that. That should be the first ways that the universe made when it came into conscious existence, even though it's supposed to be pantheistic. It's very confusing. But hey, do text, it's all over the place. You can only expect so much. Not as consistent as a Warhammer subplot, you know? Subplot. Half committed to enunciating what I was going to say. Actually, main plot, too. Everything in retcon. You're given the Disney treatment, and it's tragic. Still, Warhammer requests are welcome too. Just because they have cast me out does not mean that I do not welcome fellow fans. Have they cast you out? I want to. Same issue with the multiplayer thing. Just a lot of bullies. There's her robotic arm. Face was consumed by the fungus. There are spoilers, by the way. Basic plot aspects of the little poopy dress. Cut off set sleeve to show her human hand. And I guess set for plot points, if you know about Princess Sharana, she appears at the point in the plot where a lot of things have already been built upon. So don't have to be too mindful for spoilers in that regard. But if you don't know who Princess Sharana is, I will keep my peace so that you all can watch the show yourselves. Your fingers. Poor soul, at least. Not spoiling again. Just for having to keep on that warlike persona when she still is just a lady at the end of the day. But ruling a kingdom at the end of the world. A lot of pressure. Never read any of the follow-up web series or anything for people who took it on themselves to kind of expand on the story. That's kind of reinforcing the whole point of Studio Ghibli. Art first. I was asked to make another character from that, the deformed kid. Ended up becoming a dancer. Can't quite remember the name of it. Let me know in the comments if you do. Okay, now we're getting into the dress. I'll do her head here while we're in that epoxy. Necessarily have to build anything around it. And the hair's nice, cropped up for efficiency. Sit around her tiara, so that'll work. And I always appreciate characters that I don't have to feel embarrassed about sculpting, since the studio does not over-sexualize its women. Yeah, that's the preference. Feel like Drake and Josh sometimes when he was making the salsa. Sorry, man. Leave that to You guys, just my preference. Still, it's tough when you, especially for drawing. And again, because I've tried, need to practice anatomy work and so forth, and people think that you're what the modern world would call a gooner, but not necessarily the case. It is a hazard, though, if you're going to do anatomy work, to either be accused of drawing too much attention to these things, or the work will suffer because you don't emphasize them enough. Quite the fine line. Quite the fine line. Respect the work. Do her shoes, and then I'll put the dress on last. She's got massive boots. Not that, boots, B-O-O-T-S. Again, kind of outing yourself there, bro. You regret nothing? Very well. Very well. Second shoe armor. Question here: would you be against doing? Would I be against doing things from a video game that's basically a gooner game? Again, I just need the character in of themselves to be appropriate for all audiences. If the game is sus, as they say, that I don't necessarily mind. If the character is sus, that obviously puts me in an uncomfortable position. So, as long as the character can be, doesn't mean they always are, but can be presented in a modest fashion. That's all I would request. But no, you got a character from a video game. I'm not going to play it, but I wouldn't mind sculpting a character from it if it would be a blessing to you and the fans of it. So. All right, let's get her dress on, and then be done. Get some motion in it. Her standing in some of her heroic artwork. No one will know about the leg muscle details, but I will. I think that one is just something between me, Lord, and you guys. Yeah, let's do a sword. Not a spoiler to say she is featured with one. And that That'll do it. Bauble. Enforce that a little bit. Save a little bit to wrap around your wrists so that it's easy to pose with. And we're done. Here we go. Princess Kushana. Well, thank you all for joining me in the fun live stream. A little bit of banter, a little bit of productivity. Always enjoy opportunities to engage with you guys. If you have requests, please engage with them. I want to meet you where you're at. But again, just like they're always free, these times will be at my expense. So hopefully they will continue to be a blessing to you as they are provided. I will be logging off now. Reports will go out as far as when they will take place on YouTube and Tumblr, since that's where we get the most traffic. And I'll hopefully see you guys again soon when I have the time. I'll give you guys about a week's notice if I can plan on it. And then if I get sick, I'll just let you know then too. But looking forward to it. Thank you all for joining me, and see you all again for the next live stream.